The most feared mafia king in America had one rule: never spend the night with the same woman twice. For 20 years, Matteo Russo lived by that rule. He trusted money. He trusted power. He trusted fear. But he never trusted love. Love had cost him everything. At 42, Matteo ruled an empire built on loyalty and blood. Politicians feared him. Rivals avoided speaking his name. Newspapers called him a myth because no photograph of him had surfaced in nearly a decade. The truth? Matteo preferred it that way. The fewer people who knew him, the fewer weapons they had against him. And then one rainy night in Chicago, he made the greatest mistake of his life. It began with a painting. Matteo had arrived in the city for business. The meeting ended early, and for reasons he couldn't explain, he decided to walk. No bodyguards. No drivers. No weapons visible. Just a man in a black coat walking through cold streets. Then he saw the gallery. The sign read, "Art of the Soul." He almost kept walking. Almost. Instead, he stepped inside. The gallery was small and nearly empty, and then he saw it. A painting hung alone on the far wall. It showed a man sitting in darkness. His face couldn't be seen, but his eyes looked tired, lonely, haunted. Matteo froze. It looked exactly how he felt. People usually stare at that one. A voice interrupted him. He turned. She stood beside him wearing paint on her fingers and a sweater that looked 2 sizes too big. Long, black hair framed her face. Her eyes were warm, curious, beautiful. She smiled. "I painted it." Matteo looked back at the canvas. "Who is he?" She shrugged. "I don't know. You painted him." "I know." She laughed softly. "It sounds crazy, but I just saw him in my mind." Matteo looked at her. "Then maybe you know him." "No." She looked at the painting again, "But I think he's sad." Silence. Nobody had ever described Matteo Russo that way. Dangerous. Ruthless. Cruel. Those were words people used. Never sad. Yet somehow, a stranger had painted his loneliness. She extended her hand. "I'm Sophia." He stared at her hand, then took it. "Matteo." She smiled again. He had forgotten smiles could feel warm. "What do you think of my mystery man?" she asked. "I think he looks like someone waiting." "Waiting for what?" Matteo looked at the painting. He didn't know, and somehow, that bothered him. They talked, then kept talking. The gallery closed. They still talked. He learned she was 28. An artist? Her mother had died 3 years earlier. Her father had never been part of her life. She lived alone and painted because she couldn't imagine doing anything else. "And you?" she asked. "What do you do?" Matteo smiled slightly. "I solve problems." She laughed. That's a suspicious answer. It usually ends conversations. Not this one. For reasons he couldn't explain, he stayed. They walked through the city. They drank coffee from a 24-hour diner. They laughed, actually laughed. At 2 in the morning, Sophia looked at him. "You seem lonely." Matteo almost stopped walking. She had done it again. Seen something nobody else did. "I don't usually keep company." "Maybe you should." "Maybe?" She smiled. "You know, for a mysterious problem solver, you're not bad." He laughed. A real laugh, and Sophia looked shocked. "What?" "I wasn't sure you could do that." "Do what?" "Smile." He looked at her. Neither looked away. The city seemed quieter, smaller. Suddenly, the distance between them felt very short. Some people spend years together and remain strangers. Others meet for one evening and somehow recognize each other. By sunrise, Matteo knew one thing. He should leave. Immediately. He didn't. Instead, he spent one unforgettable night with the beautiful artist. And when morning arrived, he broke his own heart because he left before she woke up. No note, no phone number, nothing. He disappeared. He told himself it was the right thing. He would never see her again. He was wrong. Exactly 1 year later, his nephew walked into his office smiling, and Matteo Russo's life changed forever. Exactly 1 year later, Matteo Russo's morning had been perfectly ordinary, which was unusual. In his world, ordinary rarely existed. He sat behind his desk on the top floor of Russo Tower, looking over reports from New York, Boston, and Miami. Someone knocked. Without waiting for permission, the door opened. Lucas Russo walked in. Matteo looked up. His nephew was smiling. That alone was suspicious. At 31, Lucas didn't smile this much. "What happened?" Matteo asked. Lucas grinned. "You say that like something's wrong. You look happy." "I'm investigating." Lucas laughed and dropped into the chair across from him. "I met someone." Matteo returned to his paperwork. "You've met people before." "No. This one's different." "They're always different." "I'm serious." "So am I." Lucas sighed. "You really don't believe in love." "I believe in taxes." Lucas laughed again. Then his expression changed. "I'm proposing." Matteo stopped writing. Now he looked up. "How long have you known her?" "A year." "A whole year?" Lucas frowned. "Is that sarcasm?" "A little." Lucas shook his head. "I love her." Silence. Matteo rarely heard those words in his world. Love wasn't something men like them spoke about. Power, money, revenge. Those things made sense. Love was dangerous. It made people weak. It gave enemies something to destroy. "What does she do?" Matteo asked. "She's an artist." Matteo nodded. "What is her name?" Lucas smiled. "Sophia." The pen slipped from Matteo's hand. It hit the desk. Silence. Lucas blinked. "You okay?" Matteo didn't answer. There were thousands of women named Sophia. Thousands. It meant nothing. "Do you have a picture?" Lucas immediately reached for his phone. Of course. He held up the screen. Everything inside Matteo stopped. It was her. The gallery. The coffee. The smile. The woman who painted loneliness. Sophia. The same Sophia. A year vanished. He could hear her laugh. See paint on her fingers? Remember the way she looked at him beneath the city lights? For the first time in years. Matteo Russo forgot how to breathe. "You know her?" Lucas asked. Matteo blinked. No. No, he didn't know her. Not really. He knew one evening, one night, one impossible memory. He picked up his pen. No. Lucas studied him. "You sure?" "I'm sure." Lucas smiled again. "You're going to love her." Matteo almost laughed. Love her? That was the problem. "She's amazing," Lucas continued. "She's kind. She's smart. She sees things in people nobody else sees." Matteo slowly looked at him. Sees things in people. Of course she did. She had seen through him in one night. "I want you to meet her." "When?" "Tonight." "What?" "Dinner." Matteo stared. "Tonight?" "You're free." "I have work." "You always have work." "I'm suddenly very busy." Lucas laughed. 7 o'clock. Then he stood. "And be nice." The door closed. Silence returned. Matteo remained perfectly still. Then he stood, walked to the window, and cursed under his breath. For 20 years he had mastered himself, controlled every emotion, buried every weakness. Now one photograph had unsettled him. One photograph. A knock interrupted him. His advisor entered. Marco Romano had served the Russo family for 40 years. He took one look at Matteo's face. "What happened?" Matteo didn't answer. Marco frowned. "Someone die?" "No." "Then what is it?" Matteo finally looked at him. "Lucas is getting married." Marco blinked. "That's wonderful." "It isn't." Now Marco looked concerned. "Why?" Silence. Then Matteo said the words, "I know her." Marco smiled. "That's all?" "No." Another silence. Then realization crossed the older man's face. Oh. Matteo nodded once. Oh, Marco repeated. The office suddenly felt smaller. How well do you know her? Marco asked carefully. Matteo looked out the window. One evening, Marco waited, and one night, Marco closed his eyes. Oh, this is bad. I know. Does Lucas know? No. Does she know who you are? No. Marco rubbed his forehead. This is very bad. I know. What are you going to do? Matteo didn't answer. Because for once, had absolutely no idea. At exactly 7 o'clock that evening, the doors of the Russo estate opened. Lucas entered first. Then Sophia stepped inside. She looked beautiful. Simple black dress, hair falling over one shoulder. No jewelry, except a silver bracelet. Then she looked up. Their eyes met. She froze. The color left her face. Matteo stopped breathing. Matteo stopped breathing for one terrible second. Neither moved. Lucas smiled. Uncle, this is Sophia. Silence. Then, Sophia whispered, Matteo? Lucas looked confused. You know each other? Neither answered. Lucas laughed nervously. What are the odds? Still silence. Finally, Matteo spoke. Hello, Sophia. She stared at him, then around the enormous mansion, then at him again. Realization slowly appeared. She finally understood. The mysterious man. The one who solved problems. The one who vanished. He wasn't ordinary. He wasn't even close. He was Matteo Russo, the Mafia King, the most feared man in America. And he was standing in front of her, as her boyfriend's uncle. Nobody moved. Nobody spoke. Lucas looked from one face to the other. Then he smiled. Okay, this is officially weird. How do you know each other? Sophia opened her mouth. Nothing came out. Matteo answered first. We met once. Lucas relaxed. That's it? Neither replied. When? A year ago, Sophia said quietly. Lucas looked surprised. A whole year ago? Small world. You could hear a clock ticking somewhere in the mansion. Small world. No. It suddenly felt very, very small. Come on, Lucas said cheerfully. Dinner's getting cold. He put his hand on Sophia's back. She flinched, not because of Lucas, because she could still feel Matteo looking at her. That was the problem. He looked exactly the same. The same dark eyes. The same calm expression. The same face she'd spent an entire year trying to forget. And somehow, he looked even more dangerous in a black suit. Dinner began. Lucas did most of the talking. Sophia barely touched her food. Matteo barely spoke. The silence between them had become another person sitting at the table. Finally, Lucas noticed. You okay? Sophia smiled quickly. Just tired. You look pale. I'm fine. She wasn't, because every few seconds she'd accidentally look up, and Matteo would already be looking at her, not smiling, not speaking, just watching, as if he couldn't believe she was real. As if he were remembering something. It was unbearable. Then Lucas laughed. You know what's funny? Nobody answered. You both drink black coffee. Silence. You both hate olives. Silence. You both love old movies. More silence. Lucas blinked. Okay. This is getting creepy. Matteo picked up his glass. Sophia looked down. Neither said a word. After dinner, Lucas received a business call and excused himself. I'll be right back. The moment he left the room, silence rushed in. Sophia stood. I should go? Matteo remained seated. You just got here. She looked at him. For one long second, nobody breathed. Then she whispered. You disappeared. Straight to the point. No anger, no accusation, just fact. Matteo looked away. I know. Why? He didn't answer. She took a step closer. Why? His voice was quiet. Because I don't keep people. She frowned. What does that mean? It means I leave. You leave everyone? He walked out after Sophia, because suddenly, he wasn't afraid of losing control. He wasn't afraid of the past. He wasn't even afraid of the truth. He was afraid of one thing, that somewhere in this impossible mess, the greatest mistake of his life had just become the most important thing in it. Sophia didn't stop until she reached the garden. Cold night air filled her lungs. She wrapped her arms around herself and tried to breathe. The doors opened behind her. She didn't turn around. She knew it was him. Matteo. Silence settled between them. Then he spoke. Is it mine? Straight to the point. No anger. No fear. Just one question. Sophia closed her eyes. For a long moment, she couldn't answer. Then, yes. The world became very quiet. Somewhere in the distance, a fountain continued to run. Matteo didn't move. Didn't blink. Didn't even breathe. At 42 years old, the most feared mafia king in America had just learned he was going to be a father. Finally, he spoke. How long have you known? 3 months. 3 months. And you didn't tell me. She laughed softly. A sad laugh. Tell you where. Silence. You disappeared, Matteo. The words hit harder than she intended. I didn't know your last name. She looked at him. I didn't know where you lived. I didn't know if you were married. I didn't know if you were even alive. He looked away. Because every word was true. I looked for you, she continued quietly. I went back to the gallery every week. Her eyes became wet. You never came. For the first time in years. Matteo had no defense. Because he had left. Because he had convinced himself it was better. Because he had walked away. And now there was a child. His child. Sophia wiped her eyes. I didn't tell Lucas. Matteo looked at her. He thinks it's his. Silence. But it isn't. No. Another silence. What were you planning to do? He asked. I don't know. She laughed again. I honestly don't know. Then her expression changed. Fear appeared in her eyes. Actually, that's not entirely true. What? She looked toward the mansion, as if afraid someone might hear. There was another reason I didn't say anything. Matteo frowned. What reason? Sophia swallowed. My mother. What about her? She looked at him. You remember I told you she died? He nodded. She left me something. What? Her journals. Silence. I didn't read them for years. Why? Because I missed her too much. She looked down. I finally read them 4 months ago. What did they say? She lifted her eyes. They're about your family. Everything inside Matteo became still. What? My mother wasn't only an artist. Silence. She was an investigative journalist. The garden suddenly felt colder at an unfelt. Years ago, she continued, she started investigating the Russo family. Matteo stared at her. She believed someone inside your family ordered a murder. Silence. Then,